So this is AP World History, Chapter 2, Part 3 of Mesopotamia, the broader influence of Mesopotamian society. So today this section is going to cover the people that are not Sumerian and the people that came in from other areas and influenced the Mesopotamian area. And the first group that we're going to look at are the Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews. So all these three are the same. They're one and the same. Hebrews are Israelites, Israelites are Jews. So if you hear me talk about them um, in any form, Hebrews, Israelites, whatever word I use, they're pretty much the same. So the first thing you need to know is that Hebrews were the pastoral nomads, which meant that they moved from place to place with their sheep, with their herds. Their patriarch or the founder of the Hebrews was Abraham. So they recognize him as their founder. And Hebrews used the law of lex talionis, so similar to that of the Babylon Empire. And again, remember, they're not using it as a strict form of punishment, but rather to have people have a strict moral code of behavior. They will migrate into Egypt in the 18th century BCE. And if you read the Bible, that's when they become enslaved by the Egyptians. And then by 1300 BCE, they'll leave Egypt with Moses to Palestine. So the Hebrews will form 12 tribes, also known as the Israelites. So again, that transition from the Hebrews to them becoming the Israelites. And they will be unified under King David and King Solomon. These are probably the most well-known kings of the Israelites. Very strong King David, and King Solomon was known for being very wise. So after King Solomon, the Israelites, they will split into two groups. One will be called the Kingdom of Israel, and that one will be in the north, and the other will be called the Kingdom of Judah, and that will be in the south. And what's going to happen is that the Kingdom of Israel in the north, they're going to get defeated by outsiders, and they will become known as the 10 lost tribes, and they will lose their identity, meaning that they will no longer practice um, you know Judaism, and they will immerse themselves and adapt themselves into the lands they're in. Whereas the kingdom of Judah, they will get taken over as well. They will get captured, but they will be able to keep their identity in the end. So this is just a picture of Abraham, the patriarch. And then, of course, Moses, who was famous for getting the 10 Commandments. And then the 12 tribes of Israel. These are the names of the 12 tribes that we were talking about. The next person we're going to look at in terms of his Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews is Moses. So Moses is the one that embraces monotheism. Abraham believes in one God also, but with Abraham, there is this idea that the other deities, the other gods that are there are still important. Moses is really the one that's, lays down the law and says there's only one God. So he says the one God is also known as Yahweh, and that this God is the creator and sustainer of the world, that he did it all. He created the world, he started the world, he's the one that keeps the world going, he has control of the world. And he says that the other gods that people believe in, like the god of rain, the god of fire, that those are imposters, and that they should only worship the one God. And this is really how we get this idea of, again, of monotheism. The belief in one God is through here. And similar to the Hebrews, Israelites also have that high moral and ethical standards. Moses, he will have the 10 Commandments that he gives to the Israelites, and the 10 Commandments: thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, and so on and so forth. But this is what they use in order to keep that high moral and ethical standard. Um, Israelites will also have the Torah, or the holy book. That's just their holy book that they go to. It's their teachings. And they will say that God's role, or Yahweh's role, is in guiding human affairs, that you need to look to God in order to behave and, be well-mannered. So it's the idea that obeying equals a reward and disobeying would equal a punishment. So there's the idea of Moses giving the Ten Commandments to the Israelites. And then this is the Torah. So this is what they practice when they are on Sabbath. They read from the Torah, and I believe it's in Judah. Sorry, I can't talk. I believe it's written in Jewish language. So the early Jewish community, they created a distinctive religious community based on their religion. So once they begin to follow Moses, they know that this is the religion they're going to follow. They begin to create their own set of laws, their own set of doctrine that's going to help them. And they will maintain an identity different from the Mesopotamians. This belief in monotheism is what is going to single them out, and it's going to make them different during this time period. And it will also influence Christianity and Islam because these will be the other monotheistic religions that will rise after Judaism. So just keep in mind, Judaism is the first one, and then Christianity and Islam is the youngest of the monotheistic religions. Okay, so here are your discussion questions 8 and 9. In your opinion, why do you think that monotheism did not gain a strong following within Mesopotamian civilization? Like, why didn't the Mesopotamians, the Sumerians, follow monotheism? And how is the Ten Commandments evident in today's society in terms of law? So, kind of look at what the Ten Commandments are and see how they're similar to the laws we have today. All right, the next group that we're going to look at are the Phoenicians. So it starts with the early Phoenicians. They settled in 3000 BCE. They're not a unified monarchy by setting up city states. They ruled by local kings. So it's not going to be this major empire. They're just kind of have their own city states and they're running them in that way. They're not trying to unify themselves together. They felt that trade or commercialism was more important than military or state building. And that's really why you didn't see them develop into an empire. They felt, you know what, we can be more prosperous through trade rather than to be the strongest military or the strongest empire. And they were ruled by Egypt or the Mesopotamians. And again, they're okay with that because they're making profit practicing trade. So the Phoenician trade networks influenced societies in the Mediterranean basin through the trade and communication. That's really how they were able to spread their culture around, was again through this trading. They were excellent sailors and they had really well maintained ships. They had maritime colonies, so wherever they went to go trade, they would set up a little colony there and kind of set themselves up in that area. So then when they came back, they already had themselves established. They were well known to go beyond the Mediterranean, but again, they're still along the coast of the lands that they go to. And then just some of the imported foods was raw materials as well. Some of the stuff they gave away were metal goods, textiles, pottery, glass, arts. And of course, similar to all other influences, they also adopted Mesopotamian culture to their own. So these are right here. You see a artifact of what they believe the ships were. These were the Phoenician ships, and then people who would draw the ships. This is how they drew them. So evidence that these ships were, strong, well-maintained ships. Some of the stuff that they exported, the indigo and textiles, and then this is kind of their trade routes. You see they're into the Mediterranean all along here, go out a little further, almost into the Atlantic Ocean on the Gulf of Spain, but very well traveled. Okay, the Phoenicians are probably most well known for their alphabet, for their writing, and this is actually where we get our writing from because it was moved or given from the Phoenicians to the Greeks. So Phoenicians developed the alphabet we use today. They used letters to build words. There were no vowels at that time. And more literacy because of this is going to develop. More people are going to learn how to read. Not everybody, and it's still a limited amount, but there will be more than there was before. And the Phoenician alphabet will spread throughout the Mediterranean basin. and later into Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. So you can see the hieroglyphics here, the hieratic script. This is the Phoenicians, and then the later equivalents. So you can kind of see the similarities in like the letter A, B. These are C's, the D's. So there are similarities, and that's how they figure out that our alphabet came from the Phoenicians. Okay, guys, so that pretty much concludes chapter 2, part 3. Again, just keep in mind the people that influence the area. We have the Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews. Pretty much the big contribution here was this idea of monotheism and the 10 Commandments, and how we still have these 10 Commandments a part of our everyday lives. The other big thing here was the Phoenicians and how they were really good maritime traders. They would rather trade than establish themselves as large empires. And then, of course, how they contributed to the alphabetic writing that we use today. All right, so the next section is the final section for chapter 2, and that will cover the Indo-European migrations.